if not for me, like, comment, subscribe for him, and maybe he'll make another appearance on the channel. Maybe he'll make another appearance in the video because he's a good boy. So this is my review of my Yeti SB160. It's going to be sort of a long-term review. The first time doing something like this, and I'm a firm believer on using the first cut. So through the power of editing, hopefully I can put something together that is a bit coherent and is worth your time to watch. So just to get things started, we'll go over the boring stuff first. This bike is what I would call an enduro race bike. That's what Yeti calls it, actually. 170 millimeters of travel in the front, 160 millimeters of travel in the back. I have it set up with a new Fox Factory 38 and a Fox Factory DHX2. I think you can buy one with a Fox Factory DHX2, but I'm not positive. When it first came out, you could only buy it with an air shock, but I'll do a review on the coil versus air as well. And this isn't going to be necessarily a review on the parts that I have on the bike, because I don't think you definitely can't buy a bike with the parts that I have on it, or really the setup that I have. So I'll just go over the bike, and then if y'all want me to do a review on the parts that I have, I'll do that as well down the road. So first things first, how the bike climbs. So everybody, when I first was looking at Yetis, was telling me that they climb ridiculously good and that the SB160 climbs like a cross-country bike. And while that first statement is true, the bike does climb insanely good. It is still a long travel enduro bike with a relatively plush suspension platform that's more catered towards downhill than uphill. It does not pedal like a cross-country bike. It pedals extremely well for a long travel enduro bike. Getting into that, that's not necessarily a bad thing though, because if you've ever ridden a cross-country bike, you know that you lose traction a lot, especially when you're powering up steep, chunky climbs. So the shorter travel bikes require a bit of finesse, where you can sort of just smash up it with the 160. It's going to take more energy for sure, but you're going to be able to power through it, and you're going to have an insane amount of grip going up the hill. So, and that's going to be a theme that you notice with this bike altogether. This bike does have size-specific chainstays. This is a size extra large. They go up to 2X and down to extra small, I think. I'm not sure if there's an extra small, I have to check. But they grow by 1 millimeter or 2, I think, by each size. And I'll have to check the chart. I'll put the size here. I'm not going to say. I think it's a 453, but I'm not positive. And the reach numbers on this bike is 510. I have it set up with a 32 millimeter stem though to pull it back to put it at about 4. I think that'd be 492, I believe, which to me feels right. I like my bars a little closer and a lot higher. So that's just my setup. So when you climb on this bike, you immediately notice that you have much more efficiency compared to other long travel enduro bikes that, help, especially if you're trying to race. When you get to the top of the hill, you have more energy to put into the bike when it goes downhill. The bike has a pretty steep seat tube angle as well, which makes it nice and comfortable for long periods in the saddle. With this style of bike, you're typically going to be pedaling up a hill for an hour, sometimes 2 hours, sometimes several hours at a time to get a 10 to 20 minute downhill, depending on where you're at. Places like Canoga, it's only 2 or 3 minutes with a 30-minute climb. So basically the geometry of this bike is set up so it's a very comfortable climber. If you want to slide the seat forward, it helps a little bit too. I just have it right in the middle at the neutral position, and I think it's pretty long. It's got a long seat tube, so you can stick this is a Fox Factory 200 millimeter, and you can stick it all the way down and slam it, and it still has plenty of space left. Unfortunately, they don't make droppers long enough for us tall people, so as you can see, it's sitting outside of the bike quite a bit. I haven't tried a 240 yet. I might try that soon, but I feel like I have plenty of saddle clearance when I'm going downhill. So all in all, a very, very efficient climber. One of the betters. I've ridden several enduro bikes, and this one definitely climbs the best out of all of them. The most efficient, and you know that has to do a lot with the Switch Infinity, which I'll try and show a diagram of from Yeti's website, just to do a little bit more explaining on what that's actually doing, because you can say it's, you know, the Switch Infinity, it does X, Y, and Z, but if you don't actually see it moving, it's hard to understand. So really, when you hop on a bike like this, or this specific bike actually, and point it downhill, the first thing you'll notice is that it is extremely balanced. You feel, to me at least, you don't feel like you're on top of the bike, but you also don't feel like you're inside the bike. You feel sort of in the middle of that range, like you're, you know, sort of on top, sort of in the middle, but really well balanced between the wheels, between the two axles, which really makes it comfortable when you get it leaned over and turned into corners. And then when you point it downhill, it's got a really big sweet spot where you want to keep your center of gravity sort of in the middle of the bike, and it feels like that's a wide range. So, you know, on cross-country bikes, shorter wheelbase, slacker or steeper head tube angles, you have a very small window of balance on that bike. They're very efficient, but if you've ever ridden one really fast downhills, it gets pretty sketchy, and it almost feels a bit out of control, to where this bike is the exact opposite of that. When you get it pointed downhill and you really are off the brakes, this bike feels extremely stable, to the point where it's, in my opinion, almost dangerously confidence inspiring. You get into some situations where you run out of, at least I run out of skill pretty quickly. But you see like Richie Rude, I'm gonna butcher his name, but Slalomir Lukasic, I think is his name. They're extreme bike handlers, and they get everything out of this bike. And Richie just won the overall title in 2024 on this bike, so the speed is there. The second thing you notice is how well the rear wheel moves over square edge hits. For it not having a split pivot in the back where the chain stays and the seat stays disconnect, and there's actually a bearing that helps it move, you would think that it would be pretty stiff off the rear wheel, but that's actually not the case. I mean, this bike is extremely supple, and if you hit something that would typically make you like cringe a little bit, flinch, make you think you're going to crack a wheel or something, that wheel just moves out of the way so fast, and you retain traction like nothing else. If anything, the back wheel to me moves almost like a downhill bike. Now, I say that I don't think there's, you know, an enduro bike is not going to perform like a downhill bike. I'm just saying that it sort of feels like that, the way that it moves. And then let's just say you're like you're in an enduro race and there's a flat pedally section. The way that rear platform just firms up as soon as you get on the pedals, it's insane. You get 100% efficiency out of that couple cranks that you're taking. Try and make up some time. It works extremely well. Again, that goes back to the Switch Infinity. A variable suspension kinematic, like it changes depending on where the switch is located in its travel. It goes up and down, so it doesn't just stay stagnant. It doesn't just go up. It you know, if you're looking at an access point, would that be the y-axis at 0? It goes negative and positive. By the way, this is my dog Knox. If you haven't seen him before, maybe you have, maybe you haven't. He is a purebred husky, purebred good boy. So if not for me, like, comment, subscribe for him, and maybe he'll make another appearance on the channel. Maybe he'll make another appearance in the video, because he's a good boy. So another thing that I actually like about this bike, not everybody rides like me. Some people like a more poppy, more playful bike. I like a bike that is good at really sticking to the ground, but will come off the ground when you want it to. The way the suspension platform is designed is to provide as much traction as possible, and you definitely get that when you ride this bike. It is not a super poppy, it is not a super playful bike. It is a very, very fast bike that maintains traction in the worst conditions. The way the rear wheel tracks the ground in relation to the front axle is kind of insane when you have it set up right. It doesn't really want to come off the ground, but that being said, when you have some rider input, it will come off the ground. It just takes a little bit more effort to hit bigger jumps. And you know, that's kind of my preferred riding style. I think it adds a little bit of predictability to the bike. It makes it a little bit easier to ride at speed. I think some people would say it's not as fun, but to me fun is knowing what the bike's going to do in every situation. I have my bike set up with GX axis transmission, and it is very quiet. I have had the traditional axis, the version 1 that they came out with several years ago, that was not transmission, and that derailleur made a lot of noise. Was not a huge fan of that, but the new one is very quiet, and I actually enjoy it. I have forgot my batteries a few times, which is not fun, but anything else that I've had come up, whether it's paint, bearings, whatever, like Yeti has been extremely good warrantying the things that need to be warrantied. They haven't really given me any pushback on that. And then obviously working with the Cyclepath, they've handled everything. So if you want a bike like this and you're interested, shoot me a message or go to Cyclepath and they'll get you hooked up. But overall, a phenomenal bike. Going on to my final thoughts with this bike. Yes, it is pricey. I don't think that it is one of the bikes you're going to get the best value per se out of, if that's something that you're really concerned about. It's very expensive compared to other bikes with the same parts, but it is a Yeti. It's a boutique bike. It's a well-renowned bike. There's not a whole lot of them out there, and the experience of owning one is kind of different than anything else you'd receive from any other bike brand. So if you want a bike that performs extremely well, one of the best bikes you can buy in my opinion, it's definitely the bike for you. If you're not super concerned with cost, I would say go for it. And if you are, maybe you can find one on Marketplace used. Haven't had a whole lot of issues with them, so I think it's a pretty decent buy used, but the value retained in the used market is definitely higher than any other bike brand out there, and I can say that is accurate by a long ways. You see used Yetis selling for $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 still, and you know, S-Works, specialized S-Works bikes are selling for less than $4,000, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. So if you want a bike that retains its value, you're gonna love it. It's gonna hold the geometry for, you know, the same. The SB150, the predecessor to this bike, still had 65-degree head tube angle, and this one is at 64. So I don't imagine they're going to change it that much anytime soon. So yeah, it's one of those bikes that you kind of get what you pay for, and in my opinion, it's one of the best riding bikes that you can possibly buy. So, but yeah, so that's my Yeti SB160 long-term review. Insane bike, super quiet bike, super composed bike, and honestly just a super well-rounded package if you are somebody that likes to maintain traction with the ground and don't really jump a whole lot. So there it is, the Yeti SB160.